reality is as a group, we physicians we're understaffed, and that's the reality, right? We need more of us because we need to be able to do these other things. We need to be able to live a quality of life that's more meaningful and more on a personal level, healthy and just being able to kind of do things that are important to us while still seeing patients and taking care. And unless we need more, because the reality is it's never going to change, and unless we have more people who are kind of splitting this work, because the patient volume will always be there, and we can't sacrifice the patient volume, but at the same time we can't sacrifice our own personal health and life.
I think a big misconception amongst people who are not in pharma, who are still in clinical medicine, is pharma seems like this very luxurious, like utopia, like, oh, I'm just gonna leave medicine and go work in pharma. But you guys work really, really hard. I've spoken to you. It's not it's a whole new career, like you said, and there's a lot of travel involved as well from what I'm here, what I hear from my friends. With that said, though, do you feel like your quality of life has changed? And if so, is it for the better?
I so the short answer is yes, right? It's peaks and troughs, right? Like in pharma, it's really interesting. There's times when you're preparing for an interaction with the FDA, when you're writing a briefing book, when you're, working on a protocol and you have deadlines coming up that are just wild, right? You're working all day long, working on things late at night, finishing dinner. Someone from California reaches out. You're working on something at 10 at night. You're just trying to get it. But that's more the exception than the rule. And I felt like where academics was, or at least where we were going, it was becoming more that kind of life was more the rule than the exception, right? Like we were working all the time. And so from that perspective, it I wouldn't say glamorous, but it's better in that, like, for example, when I go to an academic conference, I don't have to worry if I'm going to get reimbursed for a whole croissant or a half a croissant. I'm allowed to buy a whole croissant and they will happily pay for it for me. But it's definitely better in quality of life. But I think the biggest thing is I've never in my life worked a job where I expected to have nights, weekends, and holidays off. And you can't really put a value on that. Like, I've been blown away the last 2 years, not having to wonder, am I working that weekend? Or will I be able to go visit my family for Christmas? Or, like, am I going to get woken up all night and then have to deal with something during the day? The kind of freedom from call has been life changing for me, in all honesty. Like, my husband and I have the same days off now. We get to spend our days off together. I really like hanging out with him still. Like we don't have to like worry if we go visit his family for Thanksgiving, but then I have to work Christmas. Are we going to be like, what are we going to do? And that's been such a huge stress relief. And just expecting to have weekends off is wild, right? Like I know this sounds so funny, and to anyone who's not in medicine, they're going to be like, what are you talking about? That's so weird. But we don't expect to have all of our weekends off in medicine. We don't expect to have all of our holidays off. We know we're going to end up working a lot of these things. But now I expect to have holidays and weekends off. And I just, so my quality of life from that perspective has definitely gotten a lot better. As I have more time for me, more time to do things that I enjoy, more time to even if I'm having a really, really hard work week, Friday night rolls around and, I got the weekend, right? I'm not on call dealing with a status in the ICU or, coming into round on 14 patients and things like that. And that's been life changing. I would say too, on average, I don't want to get into specifics, but, like, pay was better coming into pharma as well. So that's been a nice change. It's not like you're not going to be a millionaire overnight and you're still going to work for it. So don't come in with that mentality, but you're going to be reimbursed definitely fairly for the work you do. You're appreciated, what's really nice. And I'm not saying that we weren't appreciated for doing good things in academia because, you're appreciated everywhere, but I do feel really appreciated where I am too. So my schedule is better, my reimbursement is better, my, kind of life flexibility has increased drastically. So overall, well, I wouldn't call it luxury. I would say it's definitely been a nice change for sure. And a lot of the things that I think people who don't work in medicine take for granted, um, like I could never go back to clinical medicine after these last 2 years. Like I love what I do. I get to think about things in new ways. I get to come up with things. I get to creatively problem solve. I get to learn science all the time. Like I get to learn and use what I've learned so much more now than I did in academics, which is wild because you'd think like working at a big academic center and like always being at the cusp of what's going on, you'd be like just doing that kind of stuff all the time. But here, like a big part of my job is reading what other companies are doing, reading papers, they send me to every conference I want to go to so I can go learn what everyone else is doing and bring back those ideas, right? Like that's how it should be in academics, but there's just not the resources for it. But can you imagine a world where all of us get to go to all the scientific conferences, spend all the time we need, learn from each other, and go back to our centers and bring it with us? I mean, that would have been life changing, right? Um, and I get to do that now, and it's amazing, So I feel better connected to the community. I feel more in touch with the pulse of what's going on in epilepsy than I ever did before. So I think it's if you're someone that really, and I know you guys are because you're epileptologists, and it's like, wait, how can we not be? But if you're fascinated by the brain, and you think it's just like the most amazing thing, Undev and neuroscience is an amazing place to be because we're just constantly learning about it. So it's a really, really great job, and I'm very happy.
I think definitely that's what we signed up for, right? Like that's the kind of job we thought we'd be doing, where we'd go to all these conferences and learn all this stuff and bring it back and be able to use it for our patients. And I think that's the ideal. Unfortunately, I think more and more we're becoming robots, especially on the clinical end of things, and that like zaps the joy. The little dopamine hits you get become fewer in between. Um, but yeah, no, I totally agree with everything that you said. I think not taking call has been a big improvement for me as well. I didn't make a huge career pivot like you did, but I became full-time locums, which means I don't work weekends, I don't work holidays, I don't take call unless I'm getting paid additionally for it or I'm getting compensated well for it, which is fine. Every once in a while I will do that. But the level of encephalopathy I had while working in academics, oh my God, I think about that now. Every time I get like a nice 8, 10 hours of sleep consistently, and I'm like, maybe I wasn't depressed. I was just sleep deprived.
Right? I know.
Um, so, like, to kind of start wrapping up, do you have any specific advice for folks who are or who were in our position, I guess, and want to make a change, be it pharma or otherwise? And the second part of that question is, what if you're not in an academic center and you don't have the networking opportunities with the MSLs? What would you suggest for those folks?
So I think that is a really good question. So, I mean, if you have the luxury of having, MSLs or sales reps or people that you interface with regularly, if you're even considering it, talk to them and just say, is there any medical director or anyone at your company I could just talk to? Even if it's not like I want to look for a job right now, just start that connecting. And I will tell you, people do that with me a lot now. Like people will reach out to me through people at my company, like a sales rep will send me an email. Hey, Mike, I work with this doctor. They're really interested. and just hearing about your life, sure, happy to do it. And then when a job comes up, like if there's someone who I remembered, or there's someone who, had spoken to me about being interested, I'll pass it along to them. Like, hey, FYI, here's this job. If it interests you, let me know and I can internally refer you. And that gets you past that HR robot. So, and I don't mean that the person in HR is a robot. I mean, literally most of the time it's probably a robot, because the responses I got had like prompts in them. They'd be like, you are not eligible for a job due to insert reason here, like, but you know, outside of that, like if you're not in a situation where you have these people, um, if you have any opportunity to get involved in clinical research, you don't have to be in an academic center to do clinical research. A lot of the people I work with regularly are in private practice and they do academic research, and we love them. I mean, we go to them every time we want to run a trial. I need advice on something, I'll network with them and I'll say, hey, can I have some of your time and we'll talk about XYZ problem. So try to see if there's anything that you can get involved in, right? Like, even if it's not running like a large scale trial, because that infrastructure is hard to do. But if you're in private practice, talk to the companies, like reach out to their website, see if there's anybody that you can connect with, because there is someone who covers your territory. Even if you're not like, like a, I'm sure the sales teams have like higher priority targets or lower priority targets, like, right, like based on how much you do. Even if you're not like a higher priority target, reach out to go to their website and reach out to like the contact person. Be like, hey, is there like an MSL or a sales rep who comes to my area? And just make a connection, and try that. Otherwise, too, medical conferences, right? Go to AES, go to AAN, go up to the booths, talk to the people at the booths. Show them how interested you are, show them how smart you are, chat with them, make connections. Like, it's a little bit of legwork. That's what I tell everyone who asks me. I say, I didn't just do this. This was a lot of work, right? Like, I sent out hundreds of emails and like auto applied to those jobs on LinkedIn and connecting and, Zoom calls and meeting people in person at AES. And it was a lot of legwork, but it was worth it. And so my advice would be, do what you have to do to go see these people. There's people from every epilepsy company, and there's a conference like every 2 months. There's, ACNS, AES, AAN, Child Neurology. I mean, there's so many conferences. Go to a conference, go to the booth, talk to the people in the booth, ask them about their products, talk to them about what you do, ask if there's anyone else you can meet with, because that's going to be your best bet. And then outside of that, I think what you had said before, Santoshi, about like people telling you, like, maybe consider get like a master's or something. If you're really in a situation, like let's say you're the only neurologist in rural Nebraska and it would be too much for you to take the time to leave your patients, you have too many patients, consider doing like an online master's, right? They have a lot of those. It's a little bit more of getting your foot in the door if you start applying through kind of the traditional pathways, right? Of like the websites and things like that. Because at the end of the day, we can all do the physician part, and what the companies are looking for are people that they don't need to invest a ton of time and resources in to kind of get them up to speed, because it is a learning curve. So I would just really do everything in your power to make yourself more appealing, and connect with people. If you know anyone in pharma, connect with them too. Like, people, like I said, connect with me and ask me, hey, can you look at my CV? And I say, sure, I would format it a little bit more like this, because academics and or like clinical practice CV is very different than like what they're interested in pharma. It's a little bit more business speak, right? Like, so if you're a business person, you have a little bit more of a advantage. So connect with people, ask your friends if any of their friends work in pharma. I did that. A good friend of mine, her dear friend was working at Biogen, so I talked to her for a bit, and just having those connections, getting advice, networking is your best bet, because again, you got to show once you're in, it's great, but it's really, really hard to just kind of break through that first step. But there's a lot of opportunities out there, and just talk to people that do it. So.
Yeah, going back to the holidays and weekends, I also shifted away from working holidays and weekends, and I could not believe, how much more value I added to my personal life, my family's life. You work holidays and weekends during residency, and then during fellowship, most likely. And then you just don't know any other way, right? But until later, if you choose not to do it, then you understand the value of it. And recently, I truly understood the value. So, I mean, obviously, there are a lot of problems in medicine, especially culture of medicine, clinical medicine. What do you think needs to happen to shift from this culture of prioritizing productivity over, humanity?
Yeah, I know. If I had an answer to that worked perfectly, I think I'd be a very rich man. But the reality of the situation is I think that it has a lot to do with the kind of resource constrained environment that we live and work in these days, right? I mean, we need more people practicing medicine. We need more qualified epilepsy specialists. I mean, because that's what I know. But I mean, the wait to get into an epilepsy center in many areas is huge, right? And so seeing less patients means the wait times go up, and having less, and having the wait times go up and having less ability to get patients in for video EEGs means delays to getting them characterized. So if you start seeing less patients and we start admitting less patients, then there's longer waits for patients to get care. There's, more patients having unchecked seizures, more people dying from SUDEP, right? So I think the reality is as a group, we physicians we're understaffed and that's the reality, right? We need more of us because we need to be able to do these other things. We need to be able to live a quality of life that's more meaningful and more on a personal level, healthy and just being able to kind of do things that are important to us while still seeing patients and taking care. And unless we need more, because the reality is it's never going to change, and unless we have more people who are kind of splitting this work, because the patient volume will always be there, and we can't sacrifice the patient volume, but at the same time we can't sacrifice our own personal health and life, right? So I wish there was a better answer. I wish I had something. The only little last tidbit of advice I would say in general is you also don't have to do any one thing full time. And I think people forget that, right? I've talked to a lot of people who are like, I'm really interested in doing medical illustration, or I'm really interested in, working. I forget what someone was telling me they were working on some really cool project with like the fireman's company, and like working on like streamlining how firemen physicals are and something like that. And I'm like, I really like these things, but I don't have enough time to do them full time, and those are only part-time jobs. We also need to remember that as physicians, you don't have to be a full-time academic physician or a full-time private practice physician. You can be a part-time clinician and a part-time medical illustrator. You can be a part-time clinician and a part-time medical monitor and things like that too, right? So if there's something about medicine that brings you joy, don't not do it because you think you need to do all clinical practice, even if it's not in the same place. We all think that we have one, we should do one thing and do it well, but you can definitely do more than one thing.
Thank you so much, Mike. And thanks for the audience. Thanks for tuning in to Be Empowered, the podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone who needs to hear this. Stay strong, stay empowered, and we'll see you next time.